Okay, let's kick this off. Have you ever, really stopped to think about how your brain is actually changing every day
Hmm.
based on, what you do, what you think, even how you feel?
It sounds almost like something out of sci-fi, doesn't it? But it's real. It's fundamental biology.
Totally. And maybe you've got, I don't know, a habit you really want to break, or you wish your memory was just a bit sharper.
Or maybe just aiming for a generally better mood day to day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the amazing thing is this ability your brain has to change neuroplasticity. That's the term. It actually puts you more in control than you might realize.
Yeah, it's a huge shift from how we used to think about the brain, right? Like it was this fixed thing.
Right. Static.
But now we know it's much more dynamic, like a landscape that's constantly being reshaped. And that's what this deep dive is all about, understanding that adaptability, neuroplasticity.
And we're drawing heavily from the work of Dr. John B. Arden in his book, Rewire Your Brain.
It's a fantastic resource. It covers so much ground.
It really does. Habits, emotions, memory, even things like social connections and diet, how they all tie back to this brain rewiring.
So our goal today really is to pull out the key insights on neuroplasticity from Arden's work.
And make them practical. Make them useful for you, listening right now.
Because this isn't just theory. I mean, understanding that your focus, your effort,
Mm.
it's all physically shaping your brain. That's empowering.
It really is.
Yeah.
It means you can consciously steer that process.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're aiming for better focus for work, or maybe managing stress, or just wanting to feel a bit more positive,
This understanding can really help.
consider this your guide to harnessing that change. Ready to dive in?
Let's do it. So the absolute core principle, the bedrock of neuroplasticity, it's often summed up with that phrase, cells that fire together wire together.
Ah, yes, Hebb's law, essentially.
Exactly. Synaptic plasticity. Think of it like neurons, brain cells, right? When they're active together repeatedly, the pathway between them gets stronger.
Like forging a path in the woods. The more you walk it,
The clearer it becomes. Exactly. And conversely, connections you don't use, they weaken.
they get pruned away, like an overgrown trail.
Precisely. The brain is efficient like that.
Okay, so repetition strengthens connections. Now, Arden gives us this handy acronym, EAD, for intentionally building new pathways. Can you break that down?
Sure. FEED stands for focus, effort, effortlessness, and determination.
Okay.
Focus is about consciously directing your attention, like really zeroing in on what you want to learn or change.
Putting the spotlight on it?
Right. Then comes effort. This is the active work pushing your brain to make those new connections. It often feels hard at first.
Like bushwhacking through that undergrowth.
Good analogy. Then effortlessness. This is what happens with practice. The pathway gets stronger, the action or thought feels more natural, easier.
The well-worn path.
Exactly. And finally, determination. That's the commitment, the grit to stick with it, even when it's tough or feels slow.
Sticking to the path even when there are rocks or fallen trees.
Got it. It's about persistence.
That makes so much sense. So applying FEED, focus, effort, determination,
Yeah.
until it gets easier. We're like brain architects.
In a very real way, yes, you're guiding the construction.
And this whole firing together, wiring together thing, it really shines a light on how habits form, doesn't it? Good ones and bad ones.
Absolutely. A habit is just a strongly wired neural pathway activated over and over again.
That morning coffee routine or, doom scrolling on your phone.
Same underlying process. Understanding that is step one if you want to change a habit. You need to build a new pathway and weaken the old one.
Okay, let's shift to emotions. This rewiring seems super relevant for things like fear and anxiety. Arden calls the amygdala the brain's panic button.
Yeah, the amygdala, it's deep in the brain, part of the limbic system. It's our threat detector.
It's fast, right?
Very fast.
Right.
It can trigger that fight or flight response sometimes, even when there's no real danger. A false alarm, as Arden puts it.
Like the smoke detector going off from burnt toast.
Exactly. A bit oversensitive sometimes.
So how do we dial down that sensitivity? How do we stop the false alarms? It must be exhausting.
Well, that's where your frontal lobes come in, specifically the prefrontal cortex, right behind your forehead.
The thinking part of the brain.
Right. It acts like a regulator, an overseer for the amygdala. It assesses the situation more rationally and can say, hey, amygdala, calm down, it's just toast.
So strengthening the connection between the frontal lobes and the amygdala is key.
That's a major part of managing anxiety, yes.
Yeah.
Improving that top-down control.
Okay, makes sense. So how do we build that stronger connection? He mentions exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy is a really powerful tool. It involves gradually, safely confronting the things that trigger your anxiety.
Bit by bit.
Yeah, step by step.
Like-
By doing that repeatedly, you're essentially teaching your brain, rewiring that fear response.
Right.
You're showing the amygdala through experience that the trigger isn't actually dangerous.
It's like retraining the smoke detector.
Pretty much, you're forming new, non-fearful associations.
And it tackles that avoidance issue, right? Because Arden says avoiding anxious situations actually makes you more sensitive over time, which feels backward.
It does seem counterintuitive, but think about it. If you always avoid something, your brain never learns it can handle it.
Ah, okay.
That avoidance reinforces the fear pathway. It can lead to what's called anxiety sensitivity, a fear of the anxiety symptoms themselves. It creates this vicious cycle.
Right, avoidance just feeds the fear.
Exactly. Exposure helps break that cycle.
And chronic stress. That plays a role here too, doesn't it? All that cortisol.
Oh, absolutely. Chronic stress keeps cortisol levels high. And that's bad news, especially for the hippocampus.
The memory center.
Yeah. The hippocampus is involved in memory formation and helps regulate the stress response itself, but it's vulnerable to excess cortisol.
So high cortisol can actually damage it.
It can impair its function,
Hmm.
even cause it to shrink over time, which impacts memory and makes it harder to turn off the stress response. Another vicious cycle.
Wow. Okay, let's talk mood. Shifting gears a bit. Arden connects left and right frontal lobe activity to positive and negative feelings, this idea of shifting left.
Yeah, there's research suggesting that, generally speaking, more activity in the left prefrontal cortex is associated with positive emotions, approach motivation, that sort of thing.
And the right side.
More activity on the right side or underactivation on the left tends to be linked more with negative emotions, withdrawal, sometimes depression. So shifting left means using techniques to boost that left side activity.
Okay, and how do we actually do that? He talks about behavioral activation and cognitive restructuring.
Right. Behavioral activation is basically doing things, engaging in activities, especially ones you value or used to enjoy, even if you don't feel like it.
Fake it till you make it almost.
Kind of. Action can precede motivation and actually shift brain activity and mood. Cognitive restructuring is about changing your thinking patterns,
Catching those negative thoughts.
identifying them, challenging them, and replacing them with more balanced, realistic thoughts. It's like retraining your inner monologue.
That makes sense. And he mentioned something about facial expressions. The happy face effect. Can just smiling actually help?
There's some evidence for that, yeah. The physical act of smiling involves muscles linked more to the left hemisphere. It seems it can create a subtle feedback loop, potentially nudging your mood slightly.
Wild.
Yeah.
Mind-body connection right there.
Definitely. And that connects to the placebo effect, too, which Arden also discusses.
Ah, the power of belief.
It's incredible. Just believing a treatment will work can trigger real physiological changes in the brain and body. Our expectations profoundly shape our reality.
So managing expectations and beliefs is part of rewiring too.
A big part. Which leads to another technique. Thinking in shades of gray.
Right, getting away from black and white thinking.
Exactly. That tendency to see things as all good or all bad, total success or utter failure.
Which can be a real trap, especially with negative moods.
It really can. Learning to see the nuances, the middle ground, the complexities, that allows for a much more realistic and often more positive perspective.
And finally, on mood, he briefly touches on social connections again.
Crucial. Positive social interaction is a powerful way to boost positive emotions and activate that left prefrontal cortex.
So isolating ourselves when we feel down might actually make things worse.
Often, yes. It can increase that right side activity associated with negative feelings. We're fundamentally social creatures. Connection is vital for our emotional equilibrium.
Which leads us neatly into the social brain. It's amazing we have dedicated circuitry for this.
It is a whole network. He talks about mirror neurons, for instance.
Ah, the empathy neurons.
Sort of, yeah. They fire both when we perform an action and when we see someone else perform the same action. They seem crucial for understanding others' intentions, imitation, and empathy.
That feeling of almost knowing what someone else is feeling.
Mirror neurons likely play a big role. Then you have things like spindle cells.
Right, in the anterior cingulate and orbitofrontal cortex.
Yeah, they seem involved in social intuition, quick judgments in social situations, and the orbitofrontal cortex itself is key for reading social cues and regulating social behavior.
It's a complex system, and the research linking good relationships to living longer. Social medicine, he calls it.
The evidence is really strong there. People with strong social ties consistently show better health outcomes, greater life satisfaction, and yes, increased longevity.
It buffers stress, maybe.
That seems to be a big part of it. Social support, it helps mitigate the wear and tear of stress on the body.
And neurotransmitters like oxytocin fit in here too, right? The cuddling hormone.
Definitely. Oxytocin is huge for bonding, trust, and attachment. Levels rise during positive social interactions, physical touch. It promotes that feeling of connection and security.
Which makes sense when he talks about early attachment experiences, how those early interactions shape our social brain development.
Profoundly. The quality of caregiving in infancy lays down blueprints for how we relate to others later. Those attachment styles, secure, avoidant, ambivalent, disorganized, tend to be pretty stable.
It really highlights how important those early years are for brain wiring.
Absolutely. It sets a trajectory, though neuroplasticity means change is always possible, even with attachment patterns. It just takes conscious effort.
And briefly, the chemistry of love. It's not just one thing, is it?
No, it's a cocktail. Early romantic love involves a surge of dopamine. That's the reward, motivation, focus part.
The honeymoon phase buzz.
Pretty much. The hippocampus is busy encoding those intense new memories. The nucleus accumbens reward center is firing like crazy. But longer-term attachment relies more on oxytocin and vasopressin for that deeper bonding.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, let's switch gears to fuel. The brain is seriously energy hungry, right?
Incredibly so. It's only about, what, 2–3% of body weight?
Something like that.
But it uses around 20% of our total energy, mostly glucose, and it needs a constant supply. It can't really store fuel.
So what we eat directly impacts brain function, minute by minute almost.
Absolutely. Balanced meals are key.
What does balanced mean in this context?
Arden emphasizes complex carbohydrates for sustained energy release, not sugary spikes. Protein to provide amino acids, which are the building blocks for...
Neurotransmitters.
Exactly. And plenty of fruits and vegetables for vitamins and minerals. Eating regularly helps keep that fuel supply steady.
And he singles out specific amino acids, like L-tryptophan for serotonin.
Right. Tryptophan is found in things like turkey, nuts, seeds. Your brain converts it into serotonin, which is crucial for mood, sleep, appetite.
And others. L-glutamine for GABA, tyrosine for dopamine.
Yeah. L-glutamine helps make GABA, our main calming neurotransmitter. Tyrosine is needed for dopamine and norepinephrine, involved in focus, motivation, alertness. So your diet literally provides the raw materials for your brain chemistry.
Which makes breakfast seem pretty non-negotiable.
He makes a strong case for it.
Okay.
After fasting all night, your brain needs refueling. Skipping breakfast is linked to poor attention, memory, problem solving.
Basically setting yourself up for a cognitive disadvantage.
Pretty much. It affects mood and energy levels too.
And the flip side, too much sugar. Not just empty calories.
Definitely not. High sugar intake leads to those blood sugar spikes and crashes that trigger stress hormones, messes with mood, attention.
Long-term.
Long-term, it's linked to inflammation, impaired cognitive function, and conditions that harm brain health. He mentions glycemic load, GL, as a useful measure here.
Right, how quickly a food raises blood sugar.
Exactly. Lower GL foods are generally better for stable energy.
What about fats? There's so much confusion there.
The brain needs fat. Cell membranes are largely made of fat, but the type of fat matters hugely.
Okay.
Essential fatty acids, omega-3s, and omega-6s are critical. We need a good balance. Most modern diets have too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3.
Omega-3s, that's fish oil, flax seeds,
Yeah.
EPA, and DHA.
Right. EPA and DHA are particularly important. They're anti-inflammatory, crucial for cell communication, the second messenger system he talks about.
And fats to avoid. Trans fats get a bad rap.
Deservedly so. Trans fats, often found in processed foods, interfere with essential fatty acid metabolism, can impair blood flow, raise bad cholesterol. They're generally detrimental to brain health.
Okay, so diet is foundational. What about other healthy habits? Exercise comes up strong.
Hugely important. Exercise does so many good things for the brain. Increases oxygen flow, for starters.
Good for alertness.
Definitely. It also boosts BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Brain fertilizer, basically.
That's a great way to put it. BDNF supports neuron growth, survival, and neuroplasticity itself. Exercise also increases calming neurotransmitters like GABA and serotonin.
So it helps mood and reduces anxiety.
Yes, and it can even help regulate the stress response by affecting hormones like ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide.
And he connects physical fitness in students to better grades.
Yeah, the correlation is quite strong. Better fitness often tracks with better attention, memory, even classroom behavior. It underlines the physical basis of learning.
It's not just about muscles, it's about brains too. And mental practice. Visualizing can actually improve skills.
It can. Mentally rehearsing an action, like a golf swing or playing piano, activates many of the same neural pathways as actually doing it.
So you can strengthen those pathways just by thinking about it.
With vivid visualization, yes. It's a powerful tool used in sports and rehabilitation.
Okay, on to sleep.
Hmm.
We all feel it when we don't get enough. But what's the brain doing during sleep that's so vital?
A lot. Sleep is critical for attention, obviously, but also for memory consolidation.
Locking in memories.
Essentially, yes. Transferring information from temporary storage, like the hippocampus, to more permanent storage in the cortex. Different sleep stages seem important for different types of learning and memory.
And cleaning out waste products, too.
That's another key function. The brain clears out metabolic debris that builds up during the day. Sleep is like the brain's housekeeping service.
So insomnia.
Yeah.
What messes up our sleep?
Lots of things. Arden mentions light exposure, especially blue light from screens before bed. That suppresses melatonin, the sleep hormone. Body temperature matters too. A slight drop helps initiate sleep. Stress and anxiety are big culprits, obviously.
And worrying about not sleeping.
That's a classic one. Negative thoughts about sleep can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So sleep hygiene is important. What are the basics?
Consistency is key. Same bedtime and wake-up time, roughly. A cool, dark, quiet bedroom, a relaxing wind-down routine, avoiding caffeine and alcohol late in the day, limiting screens before bed.
Standard advice, but clearly rooted in how the brain works.
Exactly. It's about creating the right conditions for your brain to do its nightly work.
Okay, let's talk memory specifically. Again, based on neuroplasticity.
Memory is neuroplasticity in action. Forming a memory means changing neural connections.
And there are different kinds, right? Declarative and implicit.
Yeah. Declarative is conscious memory, facts, and events. That splits into semantic memory, general knowledge, like knowing Paris is the capital of France, and episodic memory, personal experiences, like your trip to Paris.
Got it. And implicit.
That's unconscious memory. Procedural memory is skills riding a bike, typing. Emotional memory involves learned emotional responses, often tied to the amygdala.
And the hippocampus is key for the declarative stuff.
Crucial for forming new declarative memories. Think of it like the brain's librarian or indexer for conscious memories.
So how can we boost memory? Arden mentions mnemonics.
Right, memory techniques. They help encode information more effectively. There's the PEG system.
Associating items with a pre-memorized list.
Yes. Or the lossy method, the memory palace. You mentally place items in familiar location.
Walking through your house in your mind.
Exactly. Story links, weaving items into a narrative. And the link method, creating vivid associations between consecutive items.
Sounds like they all involve creating stronger, more elaborate connections.
That's the principle, making the information more meaningful and interconnected.
And general tips beyond mnemonics.
Well, all the things we've discussed. Balanced diet, good sleep, managing stress, those are foundational.
Makes sense.
Also, paying attention is critical. Arden calls attention the gateway to memory. If you're not paying attention, information doesn't even get into the system properly.
And the prefrontal cortex is involved there, working memory.
Yes, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, DLPFC, is key for working memory, holding information online, and manipulating it. So attention training can help memory too. Organization helps retrieval as well.
Lots of practical angles. Okay, nearly there. Resilience and wisdom. How does Arden define resilience?
As the ability to maintain positive emotions even when things are tough, and to bounce back effectively from negative states.
And the prefrontal cortex is, again, the star player.
It's central, regulating emotions, calming the amygdala, providing that top-down control. A well-functioning PFC is crucial for resilience.
He mentions the 3 C's of stress hardiness: commitment, control, challenge.
Right, commitment, being engaged and finding purpose. Control, believing you can influence outcomes, having agency. And challenge, seeing stressors as opportunities for growth, not just threats.
Cultivating that mindset builds resilience.
It does. Along with optimism and curiosity, which also foster neuroplasticity.
And it's encouraging that plasticity continues even as we age. The idea of cognitive reserve.
Yeah, cognitive reserve is like having a buffer. It's the brain's ability to cope with age-related changes or even damage by using existing resources more efficiently or finding alternative pathways.
And we build it through learning, mental activity.
Exactly. Education, learning new skills, staying mentally and socially engaged throughout life builds that reserve. It can help protect against cognitive decline.
And social support pops up again for resilience.
Absolutely critical. It buffers that allostatic load, the cumulative wear and tear from chronic stress. Good relationships literally protect your brain and body.
And wisdom. He links it to bilateral brain activation in older adults, using both sides of the brain more.
Some research suggests that higher functioning older adults tend to use both hemispheres more effectively, perhaps indicating better integration and a broader perspective. It's thought this might contribute to wisdom.
And compassion and humor are part of emotional wisdom, too.
Definitely. Compassion for self and others and a sense of humor help regulate emotions and build resilience. Laughter itself has physiological benefits, reducing stress hormones.
So lighten up for brain health.
Couldn't hurt.
Okay, final topic.
Yeah.
Mindfulness. Paying attention non-judgmentally to the present. How does this rewire things?
Mindfulness practice seems to directly strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the areas involved in attention control, emotional regulation, and self-awareness.
So you're exercising those circuits.
Precisely. You're training your ability to focus, to observe thoughts without getting swept away, to be less reactive to stressors.
And the core principles are?
Present moment focus, acceptance of what is, a non-judgmental stance, observing thoughts and feelings, sometimes labeling them. It's about cultivating a particular kind of awareness.
And it has real benefits. Immune system, mood.
Research shows positive effects on the immune system, reductions in anxiety and depression.
And actual brain changes in meditators.
Yes, studies have found things like increased cortical thickness in prefrontal areas, changes in the insula related to self-awareness, suggesting long-term practice physically alters the brain.
Wow. Well, this has been incredibly rich. A really deep dive into neuroplasticity, all thanks to the insights in Rewire Your Brain.
It's really empowering stuff, isn't it? Knowing the brain isn't fixed.
It really is. The main takeaway has to be that your brain is constantly changing, and you have a real say in that change.
Through your thoughts, your actions, your focus, your environment, you're always sculpting your brain.
So, for you listening, think about one area we covered that really clicked for you. Maybe sleep, stress, memory, mood, whatever it was.
And then consider, what's one small thing, one technique or insight from this deep dive that you could consciously start applying, like today?
Yeah, make it concrete. And maybe a final thought to chew on. Knowing your brain is this adaptable, this ready to rewire, what's one bit of old wiring you feel inspired to start gently reshaping now?
Because this deep dive, really, it's just a starting point. Arden's book goes into so much more detail.
Definitely encourage you to check it out if this sparked your interest. There's always more to learn about shaping your amazing brain.